now I move on to the next speaker, which is Khalid Choukri. People know about Khalid already because he is the Secretary General of ELRA, European Language Resource Association, the organization which actually holds LREC every 2 years. And we do a workshop under LREC. We have been doing actually consistently for last five occasions actually. So Khalid is electrical engineer by profession. He did his degree from École Nationale de l'Aviation Civile. Khalid, you will excuse my French pronunciation, and has a master's degree and a doctoral degree also in computer science, signal processing. So he's basically a speech person from the language technology perspective, and has been very, very active. And he's been a speech consultant with French institutions and companies, and prominent among them being Capgemini and Thomson. Since 1995, he has been Secretary General of the European Language Resource Association, and also founder and CEO of the distribution agency called ELRA. It's very important that resources are created, curated, maintained, and distributed, in an ecosystem which benefits all. This is what in India we should also try to explore. Now in India we have worked a little bit towards that, and still trying to monetize our resources. CDAC is going to host our data that we created for 70 languages, and we are ready to sign the contract now. So past 30 years, Khalid has been working on various aspects of spoken and written language technologies with focuses on multilingual and multicultural aspects in academic and industrial environments. And he's also a chair of the ISO SC35, in charge of the human-machine interfaces and accessibility, and is actually has been involved in other standardization activities of ISO. And he's been very kind to accept our invitation and give this keynote address. Thank you, Khalid, once again. And now you are on the mic. Khalid, you can unmute yourself. Khalid.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to be with you, even remotely today. It would have been a great pleasure to be with you physically, but as Dan said, we will just shift this to other better times. Let me try to share my screen. It's this one. Okay, I guess you can see my my slides.
Yeah.
Good. I'll just switch off the camera to get some better bandwidth. If needed, I'll switch it on again. Okay. Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very grateful to Professor Gerish for the invitation. I will share with you some of our experience on language resources and language technology evaluation, the things that we have been doing for the last 30 years, including with very strong partnership with our Indian friends and colleagues with whom we started working already 15, 20 years ago. And I'm sure that we can learn from each other experience on this. So this is a very quick overview. I'll tell you a little bit about the data paradigm, but I think Dan already elaborated on that in very detail. I'll tell you a little bit about the core activities we are carrying in ELREC and the different catalogs where we store language resources that could be useful for research, but also for technology development. I'll focus on the under-researched languages, and we'll see that even some of the big languages spoken by hundreds of millions are still lacking resources. and then about some of the events that we organize to make sure that all this is known. So a very quick reminder or hint, if we look at the internet today and just focus on YouTube, we would see that almost 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. We see that 80% of the viewers are from outside the US, so it's not really US centered. And today, if we look at the details, we will see that you can navigate in something less than 80 different languages. And YouTube has local versions in 88 countries. So if you just focus on this number, 76 different languages, and you compare it to what Dan said, 7,000 human languages worldwide, you can see the path to go and what remains. I try to imagine that if we wanted to transcribe all this audio data and do some search and some reading instead of listening, assuming that we need 3 to 50 times of labor to transcribe the data, which means 50 hours of labor for 1 hour of audio. It means that every minute would require 3 persons full-time for a full year, just to transcribe 1 minute of YouTube data. So you can imagine the huge requirement or the huge burden. Now, if you see that most of these YouTubes are in languages that are not ours, and we need to translate them, that's yet another big issue. We have these estimates that are a little bit obsolete, but more or less 500, 600,000 translators worldwide, professional translators. And translation is a critical issue in ecosystems that are multilingual. In Europe, we have about 24 official languages, which makes it over 500 language pairs. In South Africa, about 110. I'm sure that with 22 or 23 official languages of India, you have almost 500 pairs, and so on. So if we need to translate all these languages, you can imagine the effort. And here we definitely need the support of natural language technologies to help with this. Some of the modalities that we usually mention when we talk about what we do within ELRA and with our community, we mentioned speech dictation, the speech transcription, etc. We also do a lot of text management and text analysis. I'm sure that most of you are working either on the sentiment analysis or Twitter analysis to get some of this hate speech out of the internet. Sign language is also an important piece of activity. I think it's very critical and very crucial in terms of accessibility. This is a must. And to those who are working on machine translation, translating from language A to language B, should also consider that they can translate from sign language A to sign language B, but also from sign language A to an audio or text language B. Handwriting is very important. A lot of our archives have been written handwriting, and we need to address this as well. And we can go ahead with gesture, images, biometric data, and so on. And all this in some multilingual setting. That's really very important. And if I associate to this some of the applications that we are looking at now, we can see that we do have this person localization and tracking, and I will show you some of the work that we have been doing. person identification verification. That's really important. Everyone is working today on a number of biometric factors to identify people, but speech is one of this. Speech recognition, conversational speech recognition, emotion identification, and I think the best and easy application that my community has been promoting for some time is this speech-to-speech translation, where I can speak French today. Some automatic speech recognition is carried out, and the text is then translated in Hindi, so you can hear my voice in Hindi while I'm speaking French. This has been for a while the best application that the community can show. Is the data important for all these technologies? I have a very old slide here where we try to, colleagues try to add data into their machine learning algorithm. So you can see this is the performance of the system. This is the quantity of the data. This happened to be a machine translation system. And what they started pouring in is more and more resources. And you can see that without any change in the technology, just adding resources is a key. Now, this is doable for languages that have a lot of resources, but as Dan said, there are a number of research topics where we can where we are trying to get rid of the resource for a number of languages that don't have necessarily audio or text data in quantity that is shown here. Now let me go back very quickly to ELRA, the European Language Resources Association. It was created in 1995, and the main rationale behind this is to make sure that researchers and industry can share language resources and also conduct technology evaluation to assess the performance and state of the art. We are a non-for-profit association. We still have this European tag on the name, but we are an international player and our members are all over the world. What we do primarily is all tasks related to the identification and sharing of language resources. So we are taking care of all the commercial issues that are involved. We're taking care of all the legal issues, negotiating of licenses, clearing the intellectual property right, but also doing a lot of information dissemination, and I will come back to that. And we have conducted a number of evaluation challenges with partners to make sure that we have a clear state of the art, but also we can capitalize on these evaluation campaigns to package the resources used in the evaluation and make them available anytime. This is a highlight of this activity. We are a kind of middleman between users and providers. For the providers, we try to identify who are the key players that can help provide resources in particular, and we disseminate this information. We also conduct activities like validation and quality assessment of resources, production of resources in a number of settings that I will mention to you, and then the evaluation, as I said. This is the easy way to show what are the resources that we have in our catalog. We do have, as I said, speech resources, written resources, multimedia, multimodal, and evaluation packages. And we try to have this for all the languages that we can get. Today we have about 100 languages, not all of them well served, but you should always keep in mind when I talk about 100 languages, this is compared to the 7,000 word languages. Some of the examples that I mentioned, we do have this video annotated resources where we try to understand who is speaking in a TV show, particularly for the TV news, and what they are saying. So the team here took a large number of recordings, and we tried to annotate the video, but also the audio. So you can see that we are in a scene like this. We try to annotate all the information that appears on the video, but also all the speech that is uttered by the speakers. We have something similar where we try to capture information in a meeting room. So here you can see that we are trying to identify who is speaking, who is moving around, who is in the room, and so on, using a number of cameras and microphone. And we try to make sure that this information is tagged and used by the researchers for fusion of multiple sensor information. We do work on machine translation, and this is one of the current ways of doing machine translation, where we try to have corpora in bilingual setting. Here we have English and French, and we try to make sure that sentences are aligned, and with some of these neural networks, we can learn the best translation system from one language to another. I also mentioned, I hope you can see this, we have a German sentiment analysis where the German tweets are analyzed by linguists and annotated with a number of tags with respect to the sentiment. It could be just saying that this is positive, negative, but it could be also more elaborate than that. We do, as I said, a number of evaluation projects. This is one of the projects that we did recently about the automatic processing of digital documents. Just imagine that we do have a number of documents in a large number of languages, mostly handwritten, and the idea is to try and understand the content, analyzing the scan. So here you can see one of these application forms that we would like to turn into a digital document. You can also see here a map written in Arabic, where we want to make sure that this is also converted into a digital document using OCR tools and services. So this is the kind of language resources we do. When we identify them and negotiate the rights, we put them into an ELRA catalog. This catalog is available to everyone. I think I checked the figures recently. We went over this 30% of free of charge for research purposes. Some of them are even free of charge for everyone. We do have what we call the universal catalog. This is a catalog where we store all information that we collect from the community to make sure that if you want something about whatever language, you can check this catalog. If it doesn't exist on the ELRA catalog or the LDC catalog or on other data center catalogs, Universal Catalog is supposed to be the archiving house for all these resources. We introduced it since 2010, the two next initiatives, the Lre Map and the ELRA Share Your Language Resources. Lre Map is a very nice initiative that I will develop and elaborate upon later on. ELRA Share Your Resources is a service that we offer with ELREC, which is our major conference, where we try to encourage people to share their resources. And every 2 years, we make a very big package out of this. And they are very often usable with very, very permissive language resources. In this slide, we have a few figures. Sorry, I didn't update it for today, but what is really important for us is the low part of the slide. We are distributing resources to, you see here, 60% non-ELRA members. So we are really open to everyone. 54% of the resources we distribute are for free, 66% for research purposes, and we see that a lot of our partners are working on speech and not in text. And we can see that 45% of our distribution is outside of the European context or European sphere. Here you have the example of our catalog. If you go to the ELRA catalog, just Google ELRA catalog, you can see that we do have all these resources that you can see the metadata, you can select the resources you need, and if these are free resources, you can either download them or get them shipped to you through FTP quickly. The Lre Map is really an interesting initiative that we took almost 10 years ago with a large number of partners, including from India. The idea at that time was to collect and compile data from all the papers that were submitted to ERIC. And just for information, we get very often around 1,300, 1,400 submissions to ERIC. And out of this, we accept about 800 papers. Most of these papers are related to language resources and evaluation. And the idea is to make sure that these resources are supplied and documented. So what we try to get is a clear picture of what exists for all the languages. And this will help identify the gaps and then bring some input and feedback to our governments or funding agencies. Very often we produce what we call the Lre Map Mattresses, and I will show you a very quick example. We started, as I said, this Lre Map with ERIC, which is the Language Resource and Evaluation Conference that is organized by ELRA, but you can see that it has been extended to a large number of conferences, including Interspeech and ACL. And the nice thing is this is really community built, because the papers and the metadata we get are from the authors. What we get and what we ask people to enter into this Lre map when they submit papers is the language resource name, the type of the resource, the languages, and so on. And really the important thing is the licensing. We try to promote the flexible and permissive licenses like Creative Commons, and we hope that this will be the major trend. This is a screenshot of this Lre map. So again, if you Google Lre map ELRA, you will find it. What you can find here is all the metadata element from the resource type, the production status, and the conferences. And here you can see the name of the resource, some more information about the resource. And if you click on the details, you can get the paper that has that mentioned this resource in its publication. What we call the Lre Matrices is something that we developed, where we take all the papers that are that report on resources, and we try to compile some figures about the resources that are listed. And here you can see a very quick example where we have the list of resource type, list of languages, and then the number of times that some of the resources were listed. For instance, if we stick to English, we see that in the resources we had, I think this is from 2016, we had something like 87 resources that were listed by the authors in the Lre Map conferences. The next initiative is the Share Your Language Resources. This is an open challenge, and we try to encourage the community to share whatever they have. including the resources produced by PhD students for research purposes. I think it's really important to make sure that every piece of resource is made available. We continue to do this for EREC 2018, but also for EREC 2020 that we had to cancel. But the resources that were submitted by our colleagues are made available. Some of the examples of the resources that we have produced, I wanted to focus on some of the resources that are of interest to our community today. Basically, ELRA produce resources on demand, either in some governmental setting or for private partners. We very often produce that in international partnership with the support of local institutions. We worked with CEDAC, we worked with a number of partners in India a number of times. And by doing this, we produced some of the resources that you can see here. For instance, this SpeechDat is a large initiative that allowed us in consortia with groups ranging from Microsoft, Motorola, Nuance, and so on to produce data across South America, data across the Mediterranean area from North Africa to the Middle East. And also, and I think this is the slide that I really wanted to show, we also produced a number of resources in the Southeast Asia or in Asia, in particular in India. It was a very great pleasure to work with a number of partners in India to produce in particular Hindi as a first language or Hindi as second language, but also English as spoken in India. And it was a very nice and efficient cooperation. We highly appreciate the expertise and skills of our colleagues in India. And I am mentioning this as one way to go in order to produce a large number of resources. The basic principle for producing either this Lila or the other languages was to make sure that, for instance, if I look at the South America and North America resources, the agreement was, let's ask one of the partner to produce a specific country with the same criteria, with same quality. So if someone produces Venezuela, for instance, they will bring this Venezuelan speech data, get it validated by an evaluation or validation center. And if it's the quality expected, they can take from the archives all the other languages. So for one language produced by partner A, they can get all the other languages. And instead of investing, in 10 or 15 production projects, one can produce, invest in only one language and gain access to all other languages free of charge. So this is one of the ways we produce resources. This is another project that we started a few years ago and that continues. It's called the European Language Resource Coordination. This is based on some European regulations about the public sector information. Public sector is basically data produced by the public bodies all across Europe. And this European directive encouraged them or even forced them today to make these resources available to research and commercial activities. This kind of resources could be textual data produced by the public sector. It could be reports. It could be bilingual, multilingual resources. And the idea is to make sure that this is made available in terms of data, for the research that we are conducting. Up to today, I think we have something like 3,000 resources for machine translation, which is the focus. And most of these free resources are available also through ELRA, and you can download them. You can see we have Maltese English, we have Greek English, we have French Italian, and so on for machine translation. The jargon that the European institutions and the European countries are using in their daily activities. A next important activity that we have is a special interest group called the SIGUL, Special Interest Group in Indo-Resource Languages, that we have set up in partnership with EnterSpeech a few years ago. The idea of this special interest group is to make sure that we support linguistic diversity all over the world, and that we organize events and seminars related to the less resourced languages. Some of you might have seen that we organized this collaboration and computing for under-resourced languages in Miyazaki at EREC 2018. But I hope and I'm sure that most of you went to this very impressive workshop that took place at EnterSpeech in Delhi on spoken language technologies for under-resourced languages with our colleagues, Professor Agrawal and Laurent Bezassier from Grenoble. So this is really a way to pay tribute to the less resourced languages. And recently we organized yet another event called International Conference for Language Technologies for All, or LT for All, with the support of, in partnership with UNESCO. That was done in the framework of the International Year of Indigenous Languages that UNESCO celebrated in 2019. And some of you attended this, and I'm very happy to see some names today. The idea of this was really to discuss the language technologies for all, and how can we make sure that these language technologies are made available on request, on demand to all communities, including communities that don't necessarily have written scripts or don't have audio data or very strong presence in the internet. One of the outcome of this LT for all is what we call the strategic outcome document that you can see the link here, and you will be given the slides so you can download this document. This is an international document prepared in the framework of United Nations and UNESCO. The basic things is some statements, strong statements towards our governing bodies to make sure that all communities, in particular the indigenous ones, have access on request to language technologies. I'm not going through all these statements. There were 5 or 10 statements that we produced with the organizing committee of LT for All. But the most important piece of conclusion is, after this 1 year of focus on indigenous languages, we managed to convince United Nations with other partners that it's really a long-term perspective and long-term issue. So United Nations decided that there will be a decade of focus on indigenous languages from 2022 to 2032 to try and solve some of the problems that indigenous languages are suffering from. And I'm very glad to see that we share this this focus with our colleagues from Google. LT for All was heavily supported by Google, who made it a very successful event. Very regularly, I mentioned The LREC conference, this is one of the major events that we organize since 1998. It's a pity that we couldn't meet this year in Marseille, but this is just, shift. Hopefully things will be back to normal and we will be meeting all again in 2022. I think this is the major issues that I wanted to elaborate upon today. I think the challenges is more data, even if the community is working on approaches with a little bit of data or no data. But I think some of us remember Professor Genilek statement, the best data is more data. We need to encourage our partners, in particular the private big organizations, and I'm glad to see that Google is showing the way to go, that it's important to work on less lucrative languages, less resourced languages, and I'm very glad to see that the open source spirit is really dominating the community today with all these new approaches for which we can have access to software, open source software free of charge. Well, I think I'll stop here and maybe take questions later on. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. We'll take questions at the end of all the talks, so please hold on for some time. Thank you so much for presenting the activities of ELRA very elaborately and the work that you are doing for Indian languages in partnership with CDAC and other of our colleagues in India. And you also presented the Lre Map and the ELRA catalog, which is very famous. And a lot of people actually who participate in ELRA are contributing data and resources on that platform. And the Indian languages data, particularly speech, is also very, very important. And you have done a lot of work in collecting speech data for Indian languages in partnership with some of our colleagues here. And he also talked about the LT for All conference, which was held in Paris under the Indigenous Languages Initiative of UNESCO last year. So thank you so much for presenting a very comprehensive view of the language resources and the need for working on less resourced languages. Most of the Indian languages are actually less resourced languages. So thank you once again, Khalid, and I will take the questions at the end of the last talk. Thank you so much once again.
My pleasure, thank you.
Could you please disconnect your presentation so that we can, next speaker, you can end your presentation. Thank you.